Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our third session in the series Lunch and Learn. The Lunch and Learn sessions are all virtual, and they are part of the League of Women Voters of Arizona Legislative Week program. Several years back, the League has a long history of being at the Capitol and have a legislative day, giving our members an opportunity to participate, speaking with one voice, and participate to present to legislators issues that matter to us. Prior to COVID, the LWVAZ Advocacy Committee decided that what we would do is actually a week-long series of programs. 4 of those would be virtual, giving as many people a chance to participate in our legislative lobby work. And on one day of the week, we would be at the Capitol, physically at the Capitol, and hopefully meet with the legislators. This year, our Lunch and Learn sessions are from Monday through Thursday. They are at noon and for about an hour and a half. And then on Friday, we will be at the Capitol. It's a members-only event. If you have not registered to join us at the Capitol, I'm going to request that Gital, if you don't mind finding the link when you get a moment and put it in the chat, then maybe our members who did not plan on attending will be inspired to attend the day at the Capitol. My name is Penny Sharan. I'm the president-elect for the League of Women Voters of Arizona and the state advocacy chair. On this call with me is Gital Sears, the vice chair for advocacy, and we both have worked very closely together for over 6 years to increase our capacity and capabilities in advocacy as the League of Women Voters of Arizona. And this is part of that work that we have done to organize such events. Today's topic is, can legislation prevent the impact of artificial intelligence, or AI, deep fakes in election? We are incredibly fortunate to have today presenting to us on this topic of grave concern to many of us, and also efforts nationally to protect us during the election with the expansion of the use of deep fake through AI. So I would like to take a moment to introduce Jonah Minkoff-Zern, who is the campaign co-director of Public Citizens Democracy Campaign, PCDC. If you don't follow Jonah, you should. I follow him on Instagram and Twitter and love many of the posts that he puts out there. Before I tell you about Jonah, I want to tell you about the work we are doing with Jonah, which is Jonah and I met about a couple of years back, I believe, when we started doing the Peace at the Polls rally at the Capitol after January 6th. Public Citizen actually gave us some funding in order to cover our costs to do those rallies. And it's through that initial effort that Jonah and I have continued to be in many meetings and are partnering on many fronts. And currently, our main effort, in keeping with Peace at the Polls, is to improve the legislation that provides protection to election workers and to elections officials. Jonah will touch on that a little bit, but today our partnership is really tied to helping bringing forward or advancing legislation that addresses the issue of AI and deepfakes. You can see Jonah on the screen, and I'll go off the screen in a moment as soon as Jonah gets ready to share his screen. I do want to read this because I think we all should know the deep history he brings to his fight for democracy. He really does build a national moment for our democracy. He's organized nationwide mobilizations to challenge the threats to democracy, very instrumental in fighting against the U.S. Supreme Court Citizens United ruling, which many of us are appalled, aghast, angry, and we'll do what we can to figure out how to fight back. In Jonah, I might also add, in Arizona, we passed a resolution. We couldn't beat Citizens United, but we did pass. In the league, in its fourth attempt, I might say, the league has been involved from the first time in passing successfully the Citizens' Right to Know Act, which really is an effort to address the issue of dark money. He's also worked to help voting rights, public financing, and other election reforms in New York State. Yay, finally, New York passed the mail voter and the early voting law, which is phenomenal, okay? And also to protect election officials and prevent artificial intelligence. So our intersection is in the area of the protection of election officials and also in the AI. Although the League does not have a studied and deep position on artificial intelligence, what we do have is a stated position on ensuring the security, the fairness, and the integrity in how elections are conducted, that every vote count, that every voter has the opportunity and there aren't barriers to vote, okay? Another area that is of interest to us that Jonah has been working on is the work in Florida with the felony convictions and the restoration of voting rights. So with that, I'm going to take a moment, and I've been doing this, so a number of the folks have heard this because they've been on the call, but they would do this to level set for all of us and remind us about our own history and the work we do as the League. February 14th was our birthday. We celebrated 104 years. We are a nonpartisan organization. We are political. Often people think if you're nonpartisan, you're not political. We're absolutely political. We're an activist organization. We have grassroots, and we're grassroots. Our activism goes back to our original founding, okay? And we believe that voters should play a critical role in democracy. But what's most important is we neither support nor oppose any party or candidate. Now, our mission is empowering voters and defending democracy. So much of what you are going to hear is advancing that mission. We envision a democracy where every person has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. And translated, what that means is we want to inspire and mobilize our voters. We want to be sure we fight against any efforts to curtail their rights. We want to be sure our voters are informed and educated and that they actually vote. Get out the vote. That's the confidence to participate. Now, very quickly, that I would like to do, because Jonah has so much to share with us, and I do not want to cut into his time, and that is that the League, over the years, we have a dual purpose. One is education, the other is advocacy. But we do not act on any issues unless we have a studied position. The League takes a very deliberative approach to arriving at a position, sometimes 2 years. Although advocacy goes back to our beginnings, the concept of advocacy rooted in stated public policy began in the 60s. And there's a document which guides all of our work, and that is the Impact on Issues document. And every so often, when we get a moment, we'll put a link to it in the chat. We do studies at the local, at the national, and at the state level. And any advocacy action we take, if it's at the national level, it's embarked on based on a stated public position. If it's at the state level, we use either the national or the state public position policies to act. And if it's a local level, they have the umbrella of the national, the state, and any unique local positions that they may have adopted. So it's very important to understand so much of our work is rooted in a very deliberative approach in how we empower voters and defend democracy. With that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Jonah.
Jenny, thank you so much for having me today and letting me participate in this program. I'm so honored to be here and to be part of this effort to get ready to lobby and also just to be active, and really I'm grateful for all that you and for everyone on the call does to advance our democracy in Arizona and around the country. So thank you so much for having me here today. I'm going to share my screen and hopefully have my sound on correctly and get started here. And so I'm going to talk about artificial intelligence and elections. So today I'll talk to you about what a deepfake is, the threats to election that it poses, and talk about international ways that it's already had an impact on elections. Talk about the FCC response and also other federal response legislation that we're working to help pass all around the country. And then actions in Arizona, and Penny will talk with you about ways that you can engage in those. So slides are not advancing, sorry. I wanted to start with kind of a fun example. It's not working. I'm sorry about this. Here it comes. So this is an audio for you.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. I've made a huge mistake. Are you familiar with the 2011 film We Bought a Zoo? The Matt Damon picture. ScarJo is in it as well, although her performance isn't anything to shake a stick at, if I'm being honest. The fellow who made Jerry Maguire. Show me the money! Anyway, so I was watching We Bought a Zoo a few days ago because it came up on my Disney Plus after I finished an episode of that Baby Yoda show, and I thought, wow, I still can't believe they bought that freaking zoo. So I looked it up and they really did do it. They really bought a zoo in real life. I thought it was just the Matt Damon movie, but it turns out it's based on a book by a gentleman who really did buy a zoo. In England, though, not in California, like the movie. But anyway, this is where the trouble started. Because if someone could really buy a zoo, in real life, not just in a movie, then, hell, why shouldn't I buy a zoo? So I did. I bought a zoo. And my fellow Americans, I want to kill myself. Owning a zoo sucks. It looked much easier.
So I just wanted to give you a little flavor of that. That's one of the earlier ones that people saw and talked about as a deep fake. There are ones that are much more serious that we'll talk about moving forward. So first I wanted to outline with you what a deep fake is. So a deep fake is a video, a picture, an audio, person, body or voice that's been digitally altered through artificial intelligence. And it's typically used maliciously to spread misinformation or disinformation. And that was a satirical example and a fun one, but we'll talk about the seriousness of the issue. What's really important to note is that the one we just saw, the audio was great. Obviously, the video wasn't, but the ability for people to create deep fakes and the quality of deep fakes is increasingly easy to access and increasingly hard to see and understand and discern from reality. And that really is why the issue needs to be addressed right away. So first I want to outline some of the global impact of deepfakes. And I'm going to try to, screen is, so in Argentina, in Turkey, in Slovakia, in Pakistan, in India, and UK, they all have had significant impacts on their elections already. And I'll show you some examples. So first, Argentina, the election there where the extreme right-wing candidate won in the end, there was significant use of artificial intelligence, of falsely generated images and videos, primarily by the now president there in this election, and really may have significantly impacted. In Turkey, disinformation, misdirected voters ahead of the runoff, and that also really may have had some impact in the outcome of the recent election in Turkey. Slovakia, I'll share a video of the Slovakia election, and that one also, if you remember, this is a pro-Russia candidate who won by a narrow margin in the end, and used a prominent deepfake video right before the election, or as an audio that I'll share with you, that really also may have impacted. In this audio, well, I'll let them explain it to you.
Just 2 days before voting began in that high-stakes election, this audio tape began circulating online. It purported to be a recording of a conversation in which Shemechka talks about stealing the election.
So this didn't come out of the blue. It came against the backdrop of a narrative that the elections were to be legitimate, to be rigged.
His party, Progressive Slovakia, went on to lose the election by a few points. Do you think?
So you can see this is an example in Slovakia recently where a deepfake may have influenced the outcome of the election. Oops. Also in Turkey, in India. Again, in each of these cases, the deepfake really may have shaped, or in India, may be shaping the 2024 election. The next example is one that happened recently in New Hampshire that probably most of you heard about. This is Biden making a call. This is a false robocall that people in New Hampshire received from Biden telling them not to vote. This was to Democrats.
Save your vote for the November election. We'll need your help in electing Democrats up and down the ticket. Voting this Tuesday only enables the Republicans in their quest to elect Donald Trump again.
Sorry.
Save your vote for the November election. We'll need your help in electing Democrats up and down the ticket. Voting this Tuesday only enables the Republicans in their quest to elect Donald Trump again.
Here's one, and this is one of Donald Trump that also was widely circulated.
Former U.S. president can be seen hugging and even kissing the nose of former U.S. chief medical advisor, Dr. Anthony Fauci. But the question which arises now is, did Trump really kiss the top scientist? Well, of course he didn't. These images, which were published by the Florida governor's rapid response team, are fake. They are generated using artificial intelligence technology. And if you remember, a couple of months ago, a picture was also circulating social media of Donald Trump getting arrested. Well, those pictures were also fake.
So these are some examples, and I think what's notable for those is the quality is discernible if you really look at them, but there are things that were shared that people believed in, and increasingly it's going to be hard. It's harder and harder to tell. Like the Slovakia example really is probably most notable at this point. This is there's one of Elizabeth Warren is saying that if Republicans could that if they could vote, they would threaten the integrity of the election. Another of Chicago mayor saying cops would kill 17 or 18 people and nobody would bat an eye. That we should stop defunding the police and start refunding the police. A deepfake audio of the mayor in the mayoral election in Chicago. So this video is a great summary of some of the international incidents that have occurred. So I wanted to share this with you. It's a few-minute video.
Imagine falling for someone words that weren't theirs, or actions that are doctored, or audio clips that do not exist, just like right now. That face was Pooja Shaili, a prominent anchor on India Today. And let me tell you that making a deepfake like this one was extremely easy to do and anybody can do it. But this is very dangerous, especially as we inch closer to elections. Such cloning can be put to dangerous use, spreading misinformation in an all-new ineffective way, as we saw in Telangana. A video of Congress leader shows him making defamatory and offensive remarks about Telangana CM KCR's political party Bharat Rashtra Samiti. In another instance, a contestant on KBC was asked who is the announcement minister and answered correctly by saying Shivraj Singh Chauhan, CM of Madhya Pradesh. All these are false, forged and fake, deep fake.
So again, more examples internationally. Sorry. So there's been federal action to address this, and it started initially with a petition that we filed, the public citizen filed to the FEC, asking them to consider rulemaking on deep fakes. We're still hoping the FEC will act on this petition. Many hundreds or tens of thousands of people commented in support of this petition, and many prominent organizations from the right and the left joined in commenting in support of this. So we're still hoping the FEC will act for rulemaking. Also, interestingly, there's federal legislation. This is Senator Josh Hawley's press release from his press release when the legislation was introduced. It's by Klobuchar, Hawley, Coons, and Collins to ban the use of material deceptive AI-generated deepfakes. And I think the fact that Senator Hawley and Senator Klobuchar are co-sponsors, among others, of this legislation shows the extent that there's bipartisan support to address this issue and the urgency that various legislators are feeling. We're not sure whether or not this bill in Congress will move in time for the 2024 election. And regardless, it's very important that states act to regulate state elections, even if this federal legislation were to move. Also, after the robocall of Biden from New Hampshire, the FCC voted to ban scam robocalls that use AI-generated voices. So this, you can see, is from February 9th, just so from less than 2 weeks ago. And this was after the false robocall from Biden in New Hampshire that I played earlier, telling people not to vote. Also, just last week, tech companies signed an accord to combat AI-generated election trickery. So this is to provide best practices to label and disclose deep fakes related to elections that the major tech companies are agreeing to do and to work together to do. This happened last week. So actually, I want to stop for just 1 second because we do have some time just to give you a chance to ask questions or just anything you want to note about this part, and then I'll go into the next part and talking about some state actions, including what Arizona has been doing. So just wanted to give you, and Penny, you can go ahead if you want. Or
yeah, I don't see any questions here, but Jonah, before we jump into the Arizona response, can you tell us a little bit about the work that's being done in other states? You know, I mean, we talked about this because you were doing work in other states. Can you shed on that? But before you jump into that, there is a question. What did they use to make these?
You know, I'm not a good technology person, as you might be able to tell by my skills at my slides. So I don't know actually what programs are used or how it's done. I only know kind of the politics behind it and that this is increasingly accessible. I think that's what's important. And I think as we consider this legislation, it's really important that we address that we kind of walk the line of understanding that anyone can do this at this point, that it is widely accessible, that it's more and more easy to do it in a way that's not discernible. So we want to regulate against it. We want to provide injunctive relief, and I can talk more about that with my slides. But we also want to provide some criminal remedy, make it a criminal offense in certain ways, but also respect that people may do this without understanding the severity of its implications. So we're trying to walk that line in creating and supporting legislation that makes it a criminal offense, but also doesn't make it too much of an offense to where people get caught up in the criminal justice system who are just doing this in their living room.
Jonah, let me weigh in a little bit on that technology side. You know, there is a popular tool out there called Canva, and you can create all sorts of stuff. The younger generation just use their phone and simple apps on their phone to create, content. It's also this kind of AI technology is also available, unfortunately, is deployed in bullying tactics in high schools. You know, we're seeing it in elections, but its worrisome impact is broader than that. You know, the use of one person's photo over someone else's body. I mean, that's an issue that high schools are very concerned about, and you know, it's part of the efforts in bullying. So very easy to do, very easy to do. The generation that is leveraging this is a younger generation, and they are quick and fast, and the AI tools that are out there is easily available and free. Jonah, one comment I want to make, and if you can flush that out a little bit, these technology companies, you know, talking about getting together, their solution is very weak. You know, they're going to have best practices. What a snarky remark, would that be best practices to do it better, AI deepfakes, or best practices to stop AI deepfakes?
Well, so first, actually taking a step back, I want to address, you're right, there are many other areas where we have to look at artificial intelligence, including in discrimination, like the Biden administration executive order looked at how artificial intelligence can be used in discrimination and bias, and working to address that. Also, the sexual deepfakes is something that we're working to address and supporting legislation around the country to do that. And we'll talk about the Arizona legislation later that does include that, which is great to see. But addressing and working to prevent sexual deepfakes is important. Then the issue of what the social media companies are doing, they're working to make sure disclosure is happening, which is what we're advocating for federal and state legislation, or especially for state legislation around deepfakes, that they can be labeled and disclosed as a deep fake as soon as possible, and working to make sure that's happening as quickly as possible as elections approach. And agreed that more needs to be done, and we can't trust the industry to do what's needed.
Okay, if you can talk about the kind of legislation you Public Citizen has helped, you know, advance in other states, it would be good for us to know the context for Arizona.
Sure, and I can go back to my slides in sharing that.
Yeah.
So we are working on legislation. Actually, I'll skip this for a second and come back to it, but around what's happening in Arizona. But so we talked about these things. The 2024 election is coming up. The accessibility and quality of deepfakes is increasing, and it's important that people have trust in elections and trust in messages. So beyond just being fooled by them, that people feel like they can make trusted decisions is very important for the functioning of democracy. So we are working. This is a New York Times piece on the state work that we're doing with folks like you, Penny, around the country to pass this legislation to address deepfakes before the federal government acts, and because state legislation is necessary as well. So far, there are 6 states that have passed legislation. New Mexico is waiting to be signed. The other 5 have been signed by the governors. 33 states, including Arizona, that have legislation that have been introduced, and Arizona is moving quickly, and we'll address that soon. And we're still working with many more to draft and finalize legislation. So working to really do it almost in every state. So here are the key things that we're looking to do with the deepfakes legislation. So first of all, we want to balance the need to address this with First Amendment concerns and making sure that legislation is going to uphold any challenges in court. So what we're doing is, what the legislation that we recommend does is it prohibits distribution of unlabeled deepfakes within and we're recommending 90 days. Legislation around the country really varies in that, but the majority are saying 90 days of the election. We're defining the term that it's deceptive and fraudulent. And something that's important is that we're really focused on deep fakes rather than broader artificial intelligence. We're pushing back on some states that want to label more broadly, because then we think the labeling will become people just glance over it, because everything is really made by artificial intelligence these days in advertisement. So we really want to focus on deep fakes in elections. We want to cover all persons who are creating it, not just candidates, parties, and committees. Obviously, social media can be significant in pushing out messages that are not just paid advertisements, that are created by anyone, establishing the requirement for disclosure with prominent disclosure. We want to establish right of affected parties to seek injunction, and we think that's most important. And establish a public agency to enforce the penalties. So those are the key elements that we see in deepfake legislation, and that we're working with states around the nation to adopt. And just going into a little more detail, we also encouraging a cutout for the First Amendment. So that's saying the satire, like the Biden's "I bought a zoo" piece, would not be considered fraudulent. Unknowing reposting, that someone wouldn't be liable for that. And the media who's talking about the issue, like I think something that was very positive is the extent that the media talked about the false Biden robocall in New Hampshire, to the point where hopefully more people went out and voted because they saw this was fake, and they wanted to, and they got the message that they should go vote. So we don't want media to not be able to talk about what's happening. The 90-day window, I touched on that. Again, that's just to make sure there's First Amendment protection, and it's during that time before elections where it's of most concern, where things are being spread the most, and where, like in Slovakia, there's the most potential for something right before the election to really impact the outcome of the election. So then. Do you want to stop there, Penny, to talk broadly, or should we go into the Arizona legislation a little bit?
Sorry. Folks, if you have questions, go ahead and please post them. I know this is a very deep topic, and for some of you, you're hearing it for the first time. Jonah, I don't see anything, but I might interrupt in the event that there is a question that might be relevant, but we'll continue to take questions as they come along. So
okay, sounds good. I'll go back. I also wanted to share what the Secretary of State there has been doing. So let me go back and find that slide, and I'll share that with you. So we're Secretary of State Adrian Fontes has really been taking a leadership role in calling for this to be addressed more broadly than just deep fakes, but the impacts of AI in elections. And he's done training sessions with election officials to talk about how they can respond and make sure they're ready. And I'll play a clip here that's talking about some of the work that he's been doing, but it's been great to hear him again and again on national media talking about the threat of deep fakes and the need to address it.
As the election approaches this year, using AI and deep fakes to test election officials.
And some of them fell into this trap. And Steve Nielsen is live now with a story. Steve, this is pretty scary.
It is. These deep fakes, they can be really impressive. There's free versions online where you put in real videos of somebody or the audio of someone, and then the computer can use AI to make that person say anything they want. The Secretary of State sat down with me today and said that's exactly what they did when they asked election officials for compromising information in this training exercise. Election officials from 15 counties gathered together for an exercise in December. Only a few knew 3 deep fakes were coming. One was of Secretary of State Adrian Fontes himself. Another, a deep faked audio voicemail of a behind-the-scenes security official from the state.
It said basically, hey, this is so-and-so, and it sounded exactly like that person. We've got a little bit of a glitch in our system. We need to get your login and password for this particular sector of the system so that we can double check some stuff. Give me a call back. Give me a call back at this number, and we'll get that right away. We'll get it plugged in. We're calling everybody, right? And so if you weren't paying attention, you might say, oh my gosh, they need help over there, and this is somebody whose voice I know. I'm going to call and give that information. That could be problematic.
So, I mean, if that happens and that information's given up, are we talking about something that could lead to changes in votes, changes in ballots, or are we talking more just about the public not having the right information?
Well, if you were really scared, you might say, hey, that's a real problem. The hook is we have a lot of redundancies in our systems, and we operate through a whole bunch of backups as we move through. And we also do double checking. So if somebody came in and said, hey, you know, Pinal County's numbers are this way instead of that way, we're going to call and double check. We're going to, you know, email and triple check. We're going to do the things that are necessary. And that's one of the reasons why, you know, in Arizona, it takes a little time to get results, because we've always been very careful.
This is really interesting. So what can you do at home to be prepared on Election Day? Fontes says just make sure you know the source of your information. Don't fall for untrustworthy sources. Obviously, you know, this isn't the first time that we have seen these deep fakes. It's not the first time we've seen AI take over and do these things. We've seen people fall for it, give a lot of money.
Yeah.
The stakes here, though, are huge. This isn't about someone's personal savings account, which is obviously huge for that individual.
Right.
We're talking about elections here.
Yeah.
They got to be prepared for this.
It's a big deal. I mean, is there anything that he mentioned, like, what can you do to really separate the two? What's a fake versus what's real? I mean, how do you really separate them? They're so convincing.
I mean, they say it's always just about if someone reaches out to you, calling that person back, having that conversation with them. The way they handled it this time, that fake audio call they got, they left a voicemail. And then that person would call back and leave a voicemail with that information instead of having that direct conversation.
Well, now that this is out there, Steve, people who are working elections, they're going to probably be second-guessing everything when it comes to people.
I think that's good, though,
Oh,
right?
it's great, but those results now may take a little bit longer even to get out on after the elections.
And obviously, you know, Arizona's been criticized heavily for how long
Right.
it takes. Election officials say it's actually a good thing that it takes so long.
Yeah.
Wow, and it is really
Take
good to
your
know
time.
that this is a possibility, you know, beforehand.
Yes.
Yeah, it's serious.
All right, Steve, thanks a lot.
Jonah, one question which piggybacks on what you just presented is how do individuals what kind of skill sets, or how do we identify? I mean, one concept was call back, you know, when you get such a call, or call the phone number to verify it's legit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I think we need to listen to cues from experts who have the technology to discern the deep fakes, and to be voices, to recognize like that we are our own media through social media, through communication with friends and email lists. We can send out correct messages and make sure people are getting the correct information. And I think a key thing is making sure people know when and where to vote and aren't being fooled into not knowing where to vote, or voting the wrong place, or the wrong day, or getting information like that. Also, we can use technology, and I think it's important we think about positive ways where we can use technology to get out information to people about voting, and make voting accessible to people. And we should think about that, not through internet voting, which is a whole nother story, and we're concerned about and we don't support, but through providing information to people about when to vote and how to go vote, and encouraging people to vote. So that's one example of a positive use. But I think we have to look at all of this as a danger, but also an opportunity. More people, we know over the last several years, more people are going to vote. More people are participating in elections. More people are having conversations about elections and politics. And that's a really positive thing. So I think while we have to be addressing these dangers, we have to look at the positive opportunities for them, and to engage with it that way, and to think about it in a hopeful way of how can we build a stronger democracy, not just feel concerned about these dangers. All right, well, I'll go back. Oh, go ahead, Penny, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead, go ahead. Yeah, I
So
don't
let me
see
go-
any more questions.
Okay, let me just run back to the correct slide here, and then we'll start sharing again about what's happening in Arizona. So in Arizona, there are several different bills that have been introduced, which is great. There are bills introduced both by Republicans and Democrats. Senator Sundaresan, who we met with, Penny, moved a bill. Senator Carroll, who's a Republican there, also moved a bill. That one is moving more quickly and is very similar to Senator Sundaresan's bill in the Senate. So what Senator Carroll's bill does, similar to Senator Sundaresan's bill, it targets distribution of deceptive and fraudulent deepfakes by defines the terms. It requires a disclosure, which is good, and it has a very specific disclosure that it's requiring. It creates an action of injunctive relief, and again, we feel that's most important, that there is an ability to put an injunction against the actor and have it taken down, or to have the disclosure required, but in the meantime have it taken down. It has the First Amendment exemptions that we discussed for satire and for media, and we think that the violations, the way that they have it worded, is a good way, because it creates a Class 1 misdemeanor for a first offense. So again, it doesn't create a danger of people getting caught up in the criminal justice system in a too serious a way, who are doing this not knowing the seriousness of their offense. But then if you're doing it again, and then it becomes a felony, or if there's an intent to cause violence or bodily harm. We talked about sexual deepfakes. There are other examples where, so if there are ways where that's involved, then it's a higher level of a crime. I think we think that the leveling is a good way. We think there are other issues that need to be addressed, like what happens then if a candidate does this, or a candidates committee does this in the last minute, how we make sure they're held accountable if there's only a small offense for their first crime. So those are questions that we need to address, but in the meantime, we see this bill as doing it correctly. So this bill has moved forward. We think that, so it's gotten a positive recommendation from both the Democratic and Republican caucus, and we believe that it's going to have a vote on the full floor of the Senate sometime this week. It's not scheduled yet, but we do think it's happening this week for Senate Bill 1359. So that is great news. It's moving forward with bipartisan support. It moved unanimously out of committees, I think with one abstention, but other than that, it moved unanimously out of committees. Then there's also a House bill in Arizona moving. This House bill has it's more broad for artificial intelligence impacts, and includes sexual deepfakes, which as I discussed earlier. So this is creating pornography or other types of sexual deepfakes where of someone doing something they haven't done, and really has been causing serious problems, and is really a serious thing we need to address. So we're glad to see that this bill does that too. It also creates an action for injunction relief. We have a concern that it's a ban rather than requiring disclosure for the deepfakes in elections, and whether that would overcome a First Amendment challenge. So far, there are bills like in Texas that have a ban that haven't been challenged in court yet, but that doesn't mean they won't. And and it does not have First Amendment exemptions for like satire and media. So we think there are improvements that could be made to that bill. But again, we're generally just supportive of these bills passing around the country as ways to address this. And this is having its third reading, which means, I guess, a full vote in the House today. So it is moved forward and planning on a full vote today in the House in Arizona. So with that, why don't we talk? And these are some things you can do. We can mobilize grassroots support for legislation. We can engage in elected officials. I also think writing op-eds and letters to the editor, and also being ready to spread the right information and positive information, and make sure people are getting the truth about candidates and are ready to go vote. Those are really important things for us to be doing as well. So with that, I can open it up for conversation. Again, really grateful for all of your time today, and Penny for the amazing work and leadership that you are doing in Arizona.
Oh, well, thank you. Jonah, a couple of things for all our members on the call. One is Jonah sort of gave me the hook to lead into this. We, as a league, are supporting both, and we came out in support. We wrote testimony because we've been working. We think this, and even though it's not about AI, it's really about elections and protecting our elections and making sure that the elections are fair and secure. And so in that context, please, the following I would like to ask you all to do. One, read our calls to action. We need you to call the legislators so that they pass this legislation. It is important. Even though the House and the Senate one are a little bit different, we are more comfortable with the Senate one. As Jonah said, you know, there is always a worry about the First Amendment challenges, but it's important to have this legislation, and sooner than later. It is our understanding we expect the governor to support this. We know the Secretary of State is supporting this. So important for all of you to use your request to speak system as we do our calls to action. You got a break this last weekend because they were in crossover week, but be ready. You know, there'll be bills are getting transmitted, and so there'll be hearings next week. That's one. The second is, Jonah said something really important, and that is we've got to fight back with accurate information about candidates and so on. So I would like to put a plug and ask you all, everybody who's on this call, pay attention to Vote 411. We invite every single candidate. Jonah, you may not be aware, but Vote 411 is the league's digital platform during elections where we post information about candidates. We don't post the information about the candidate. We give them an opportunity to actually provide their answers and their videos, etc. Because the information comes directly from the candidate, we believe that it's a much more trusted source than something you might see on social media. We encourage our members on this call to help us in this way. One, help us make calls to those senators and legislators who are not completing their, when they don't complete the questionnaire and provide information, they are really doing a disservice to the voters. Second is we need teams to help us frame questions to the candidates. We frame the questions, again, based on league public policy positions, but the candidates answer the questions. And it's a secure system, so nobody on our side can actually change their answers or modify their answers. And we make available to the candidates the opportunity to give that answer both in English and Spanish. So part of our work during elections is giving accurate information. And we encourage everybody on this call to get very actively involved in our Vote 411. Every year, we've seen an uptick of traffic by about 15 to 20% to this site. So, and you know, the league has a long history of putting out trusted voter guides. We've just moved into the 22nd century, and it's a digital platform rather than printed voter guides. So I want to pull that thread, Jonah, in the conversation so that people are so our members and attendees are aware that one of the ways we fight back. The other thing that we're doing is a series of podcasts, and we'll have some conversations about how we, you know, engage speakers like you to come and talk a little bit more. But our podcasts are, the whole goal is to fight mis and disinformation. And so again, to our members who are on the call, We've been sending links to the podcast in our newsletters. We send our newsletters out every Sunday. So make sure you're listening to those podcasts. There's a fabulous team that's working on the podcast. Now, a couple of things, okay? The bill number for AZ, there is no bill number for the US. It would just be the bill number for AZ. A reminder again, we send out texts about called RTS, so watch for those texts. Read that call to action. But Gitel, I don't know if you can put the bill number in the thing in our chat so everybody can see that bill number, or Jonah, you can too.
Sure, Penny. I'll put our state tracker here too. I had that queued up well.
Right.
So these are our various state bills that includes the
Arizona bills in the other states also,
right.
So you can kind of, yes.
And I'll get the Senate bill.
I think it's 20, yeah, okay, 1359, okay.
And then I'll get the House bill number 2 in a second.
Okay, right.
And Penny, just echoing off your voter turnout, we had a great call with different national partners earlier today to talk about how we can get people out to vote in the election, and League of Women Voters was part of that. And we're excited to team up to do texting and phone calling and canvassing and pick different days of action, like the upcoming anniversary of the Shelby Supreme Court ruling and Juneteenth, and poll worker recruitment day in August and National Voter Registration Day, key moments where we can work together to just get voters information and get them involved and recruit poll workers. And those are really, one of our most important ways of remedying challenges and different disinformation is getting out there and talking to people and calling people and texting people and getting them the right information so they can participate. So we're excited to be partnering in that effort as well.
Yeah, and on that front, to this group again, we will start doing phone banking and texting. And as you all know, the League has a platform called League in Action, which is wonderful because it costs us a lot less than if you have to go buy some of the professional tools. But we've already started building out a texting program. So if you are interested in texting, Gitel, if you don't mind putting our LWBAZ advocacy Gmail in the chat, then individuals can please write to us. So here's our call to action. Watch for this legislation, call the legislators to make sure they pass it. Second, join us and vote 411. We need to inoculate our voters against potential deep fake, okay? Third, most importantly, is join us in the get out the vote. It doesn't matter how much we fight all of this if we don't get everybody to vote. As we all say, when you don't vote, you are voting. Okay, and so really encourage you all to participate in that way. I am not seeing any more questions. If you have more questions, we'll take a few more minutes. We're coming close to the top of the 1 o'clock time, but I do want to give individuals an opportunity to ask questions. Jonah, I'm very excited you were on the call this morning with LW. The League was there. Yes, we are trying to build out a robust get out the vote program here in Arizona. We have an abortion ballot initiative to make abortion accessible. We're supporting it. The League is supporting it. Many of our League members are collecting signatures, so it does get on the ballot. Again, we need help on that front too, folks. I know everybody's a little nervous about tough topics like these, but this may mean life and death to our sisters, our daughters, our granddaughters. So please join us in that work.
Oh, go ahead, Penny, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Jonah.
Well, fantastic on that effort, and we're happy to help. So let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to. Yeah, I will connect with you and give you an update on what we're doing. I don't believe our leads on that effort. Alexis and Janet Kirby are on this call, but hopefully everybody who's on this call, if you haven't signed a petition, please sign. If you are missing petitions, email me. Everyone knows me. So email me and we'll figure out a way to get you petitions. If you need petitions notarized, email me. I will be happy to come and notarize it. We need to get, as you all know, the campaign needs 700,000 signatures, and that's 700,000 potential votes to make sure once it gets on the ballot that it gets voted in. So please, this is our one chance, folks, okay? We may not get this opportunity again. So let's make sure we get all the signatures we need on this. I don't see any more questions, Jonah. So I'd like you to wrap it up and give us kind of an overview, and then we'll, we'll end the meeting.
Sure. And I just got one directly just about how people can tell or who can tell whether something's a deep fake. And I think that's what the tech giants are working on and doing quickly, so that we will get that information and be able to correct them hopefully as quickly as possible. And I think there being an ability to have an injunction and have legal action to hold people accountable is also just a very important way to deter them. So hopefully we'll get these bills passed quickly, which we are, and it's great to see. And just, all the time we're getting more news about bills moving forward or passing, or so we're really glad. I just got news that Oregon is going to pass out of their, I think, Senate tomorrow. With House here in Arizona, so it's moving very quickly around the country, and really across party lines. I just testified in Utah this morning where they unanimously moved it out of committee in Utah. So where I'm not used to being asked to come testify in some of these places. So it's nice to be able to have this happening everywhere and have a unified front. And I think just like that, hopefully we're going to be able to protect election officials.
I was hoping you would segue into that. We are a little disappointed, Jonah and I, because our first foray was into trying to get legislation to really, we've got a little bit of language in the legislation that was passed in 2023, but it only protected a limited number of folks who work in elections. And we wanted a very strong language to protect elections officials and poll workers, but it is not moving. It hasn't even been assigned to committee, and it's been very discouraging and disappointing. So we hope that you all pick up the phone and call your legislators and say, if they can do strikers on other nonsensical bills, they can strike something that's nonsensical and replace it with, good legislation to protect our election workers. And also on that front, it's important to recognize that the Secretary of State has been very supportive of this, and so has a number of other officials, but it is not moving. Now, what's very, very unfortunate is, I don't know how many of you know, but there's a lawsuit moving forward against the Secretary of State and the Elections Protection Manual. And one of the items they want removed from the Election Protection Manual is the criminalizing of intimidation of people who would be dropping off their ballots in ballot boxes. And I don't know if you all recall, but the League brought forth a pretty aggressive lawsuit before the last elections to stop that intimidation. So we'll be taking some steps in that venue also. So important to recognize that intimidation seems to be a pattern of behavior that is comfortable for certain parts of our government, and we need to be, as citizens, vigilant and fight back on that front.
Yeah. I agree, and I hate to say it, but I think that it may be intentional that these bills aren't moving there, and there needs to be political pressure put on leadership to do that. There's some states like South Dakota, which are Republican controlled, have been moving this legislation, but the other states like Florida had it stripped out of a bill there after his active advocacy to prevent protections for election officials, which is extraordinary to me. But I think that may be the case in Arizona, where the leadership is concerned about parts of their base that want to have the ability to engage in to maliciously engage. Well, I guess they don't feel malicious, but to do these actions against election officials and not be held accountable, and we can't accept that. So we have to demand action on that. But good to see that deepfakes is moving, and we're glad to see that being addressed there. So I think, with that, I would wrap up just by saying now is a really, I think, precarious moment for our democracy, but also a moment of opportunity for our democracy. And we can work to build a multiracial and multi-generational democracy that our nation could be moving towards, or we can slide back into autocracy. And I think really now our actions and our mobilizing and our motivation and our hope and our engagement is really what's going to determine the outcome. So in Arizona is a key front for that struggle. So we're just so grateful for your leadership there, Penny, and all of your leadership in being able to take action, and Gatel and everyone to take action to address these issues and to motivate and mobilize people in Arizona to be involved.
Thank you, Jonah. Thank you for giving us time. I always appreciate our conversations, and I know our members learned a lot, and we thank you for the time and your expertise. We'll have you back again. Thank you all for giving up your lunch time, and hopefully you got a chance to eat something while you were listening to this amazing presentation from Jonah. We'll invite Jonah back again, because this is an issue that we need to continue to keep our eye on and be vigilant about. So thank you, Jonah. Thank you, everybody. And we'll call it a day. I'm going to keep the room open for a little bit in case you have questions, and appreciate all of your support and your participation. Jonah, thank you.
And thank you, Penny.